Up to 90 million will be added to extreme poverty just this year. The return back to 2019 levels for most countries will have to wait until 2022. In some countries, it'll have to wait until 2023. There is space to do more on that front in terms of stimulus, the more direct stimulus. Many leaders are sitting together and having many discussions. I mean, I'm privy to many of these discussions that are happening. You're seeing that central bank governors around the world are having regular meetings. Ministries of finance are having these meetings, and we're making progress. There has been rollback of some of the, for instance, at the beginning of the crisis, there were export restrictions that we put on medical exports. Many countries have rolled that back, that we've been able to provide financing to countries. So there's progress happening, but it will take more. The problem is less about science at this point, because we will very likely see vaccines and treatments and better testing, all of which can help end the pandemic. But the economics is not that great, because we need to have sufficient production and distribution to all parts of the world to end this pandemic everywhere. And that requires much closer collaboration. Second, there are many countries who entered this crisis with high levels of debt. They don't have the finances to do the necessary spending on health spending, on protecting people's lives and livelihoods. And here again, international support is needed in terms of sessional financing, in terms of debt relief, and in some cases, just outright debt restructuring. And it's also going to be an uneven ascent, because what we are seeing is we're seeing low-income workers, low-skilled workers getting much higher than high-skilled workers. We're seeing increases in abject poverty. Up to 90 million will be added to extreme poverty just this year. And also it's uneven across the world. What we are seeing everywhere in the world is we saw a very bad collapse in the first half of this year. And then as countries have reopened, you have seen a partial rebound. So you're seeing growth come back. So you see very large negative growth numbers, and then quarter on quarter, you see positive growth numbers. But we're not getting back to 2019 levels. That would be a V shape. So it's going to take a long time from now onwards going forward to get back to 2019 just levels, and not just even in per capita terms. So it's not a V-shaped recovery. It's much more gradual than that. And that's true for many countries, with maybe the exception of China, There is a recovery that has started in India after the very deep collapse in the April to June months. I think the next release of data will tell you that it's much better than it was in April to June months. But again, we're starting from a low base, and it's what comes when you have reopenings. And so you will see a recovery. Now, the question is, when do you get back to 2019 levels? That, in our view, will take longer, well beyond, even beyond 2021. It's been mostly measures that help with liquidity, so in the form of lending, lending support, helping with credit guarantees, and much less in the form of more direct spending, which has been more closer to around 2% of GDP, which is what we're seeing around the world, is that these direct support measures, which put income into the hands of low-income households or into SMEs, seem to have a much bigger impact in terms of bringing back a faster recovery. So we think that there is space to do more on that front in terms of stimulus, the more direct stimulus, expanding it to both urban poor and rural and migrant workers. Global trade is projected to collapse by over 10% this year. But you can explain a very large portion of that just by looking at the collapses that we're seeing in the individual economy. So it's not so much because of these trade restrictions or because of global supply chains. But that said, I am concerned going forward what's going to happen in terms of multilateralism, in terms of trade. There is a tendency towards nationalism in difficult times. And we are making a very loud case for that not to happen, because the world has benefited a lot from trade. If you want economies to recover faster, if you want their productivity to stay high, it is very important to keep the channels of trade open. Now, of course, it's not a perfect system, and it requires more steps to be taken to fix it in terms of designing the trade rules for the more modern economy, which is much more services trade, which has much more services trade than in the past, how to deal with subsidies and so on. So there are reforms that are needed, but it has to continue to be a multilateral system, and that's rules-based.